Good evening and welcome to We Keep It Moving with Marcia Jews. How's everybody? I hope you're well because I'm telling you, we are so excited about what's going on. Today's show is full, and we're going to open it up with the executive director and CEO of the Baltimore, Washington International Thurgood Marshall Airport. Ricky Durrell Smith, and he was appointed executive director and CEO of Maryland Aviation Administration in 2015, and he's responsible for the management and operations of BWI, Thurgood Marshall Airport, Martin State Airport, and regional aviation activities throughout the entire state of Maryland. He has over 30 years of transportation professional activity and returned to Maryland after serving as the CEO of Cleveland Airport, which includes the Cleveland Hopkins International Airport and Burke Lakefront Airport. He was responsible for overseeing the development and management of the city's lakefront properties. And since returning to BWI, he has led the airport to 5 consecutive record-setting years for passengers, including restoring BWI as the busiest airport in the Washington, Baltimore area region and the best airport in North America for customer service, according to the Airport Council International establishing a culture of performance, customer service, safety, and innovation. And he has received several other national and regional awards for customer service. I'd like to introduce you to Mr. Ricky Smith. How you doing?
Hey, Marcia, I am doing very well. It is so good to see you and talk with you. It's been a while.
And it's good to be seen after COVID and everything else, man. I'm just glad we still standing, right?
I am telling you, it's a blessing to be standing and being able to talk to amazing people like you.
Oh, I got some hip boots on, you know that. So look, how did you get into this business? I mean, who would think of I'm going to go and run a whole airport? I mean, how did you come up with this? Where did this dream come from? Why did you even know that it existed?
Well, I can't say it was a dream, not to run an airport specifically, but I mean, as a kid, I always had this dream to be the head of an organization, to be the leader of an organization. I used to talk about I always talk about how I used to study Black Enterprise magazine, and I knew the top 100 up and down the list because I was going to be one of them one day. And so the idea of entrepreneurship and public service kind of came together with this opportunity at BWI Marshall back in 1989. And once you get into this industry, it is so exciting, so amazing, so dynamic. You just don't want to get out. And so I've been very fortunate to be able to make some good moves to move me up. And being CEO is probably the best thing that I can imagine myself doing right now in this industry.
Oh, I guess so. I think it's wonderful. Wonderful. But I think it's really interesting because as we look at young people and where they start and how some have a leg up more so than somebody else. And so when we look at our young people, they have to be able to see people who look like them to understand and believe that they too can make these kinds of moves. And the responsibility that you make, I want you to just kind of talk through what this really entails. You're dealing with what type of air flights that are coming in and out, and how do you manage all of the safety issues? I mean, this is a complex business, it seems.
So the airport BWI Marshall has about 12,000 employees.
Wow.
I mean, it's a small city, and it's a very complicated city. But when you're in this space, it's not as complicated as it may appear to be. I mean, I think we have some of the best professionals in the industry working at this airport, and that's how we keep it going. I think that once you set out a clear vision for an organization, in this case, we're talking about BWI Marshall, but any organization, you set out a clear vision and you surround yourself by people who buy into that vision, people who can live that vision even when you're not around, or you're not looking at them or talking to them about it, the other stuff kind of works itself out. And so, I'm not an aviator. I don't fly aircraft. I have no dreams or aspirations to be a pilot or to pilot an aircraft. Um, I'm an airport executive, and so my focus is primarily on the business of the airport, and understanding that the airport is a major economic engine, um, and using this engine to benefit people that otherwise wouldn't have access to the airport opportunity. So, I happen to be an airport executive, but my ministry is minority business development and making sure that minorities have access to opportunities that come with the airport. And so that's how it all kind of comes together for me.
I think what's really important too here is what you just said in terms of several people that I know have started businesses and they have businesses located in the airport. Can you talk more about how these businesses are operated and how you even started this process developing small businesses and minority owned businesses as well to establish their businesses at the airport? Why was the airport so important?
So, the airport is a very lucrative environment. I mean, we have some 50,000 people coming through the airport every day, right? So
Mm, that's huge.
that's a good market for anybody, right? However, because of that captive market, it's also a very expensive place to operate. The security requirements, and it's a very difficult place to operate. And so, to try and introduce minorities to this opportunity, um, but it required some creativity, right? And so, we talk about this program we started called Launchpad, which kind of removes the barriers to entry because, to put $1 million into a location is not something a lot of micro businesses can do.
Right.
But they have very good services and commodities that they want to sell. And so, we created that program to kind of introduce them to the environment without the barriers to entry and allow them to grow and invest in them and give them the support services they need to grow. And because of that, and because of a lot of national efforts as well that I can talk about, I think we've been able to inspire minorities to see the airport as an opportunity. And it's been successful over the last several years.
You said something that kind of resonated: barriers to opportunity,
Entry.
to entry, barriers to entry, but also opportunity, right?
That's
So,
right. That's right. That's right.
so if we're looking at that, we don't even want to deal with the reality of what those words really mean. And you and your team have said this is not going to be the case here.
Mhm.
And that
Yeah.
expectation comes with what? How does a minority business even begin the journey to participate and become a strong member of that retail or business team?
So I think for starters, you have to kind of remove the mystique of the airport. I mean, again, it can be a complicated environment, but it could also be a somewhat simpler environment as well. And so connecting with people that otherwise wouldn't think about the airport and removing that mystique is the first step, right? Because once they begin to see the airport as a place where they can do business, that's half the battle. Okay, so once you get them there, then you've got to create opportunities for them to come in, and the Launchpad program does that. But also having a leadership team that that is committed to making sure that minorities have access. Right? I mean, we have um, all airports have opportunities, right? I mean, we happen to be one of them, but all airports have opportunities. But if the leadership is not committed to making sure that you have the right systems in place, the right policies in place, the right people in place, that you're putting a welcoming message out there that you want minorities in the airport. If the leader doesn't embrace that, then you're just going to be another airport with a lot of opportunities, and you're not going to have people that look like us pursuing those opportunities. We have about 60% of our food and retail concepts, for example, are minority owned.
What?
Right? I mean,
That's huge.
it, that is it, you'd be hard pressed to find another airport in the country that can match that kind of participation. For example, I mean, we have, 93% of all the employees that work here at the airport are minorities.
Mm.
People wouldn't think that. And part of that is because we've created an environment where they feel welcome. They see themselves here. They see it as a place where they can come and take advantage of both career and business opportunities. And once you kind of create that culture, you create that momentum, it becomes difficult to turn back.
But how do you create that culture? How do you even start with the realization that this is not going to be a closed door operation?
Well, that's a very good question because first of all, it requires some courage, right? Because when we create opportunities for minorities, those are opportunities that others aren't getting, and right when they start losing opportunities, um, you know, they can come at you, right? And so you've got to have the courage and the support system in place that allows you to take that stand, to take that
Mhm.
position, right? And this isn't about, doing anything unethical or illegal. It is simply making sure that you don't have policies that have unnecessary barriers to entry, right? And you remove those things. I mean, one of the things I experienced when I returned back in 2015, I had the same experience in Cleveland. Um, I wanted a more diversified workforce,
Mhm.
right? So I mean, I didn't have to go out and handpick minorities. I didn't have to go out and do anything special. The only thing I did was I cast the net so wide that minorities began to see the airport as an opportunity. And we had policies in place that did not make it unnecessarily difficult for women and minorities to pursue these opportunities or to qualify. And women and minorities, they just won out. It got to a point where I was talking to to my HR manager, um, because she would often send me the employment decisions that I would have to sign off on, and they were all women and minorities. And I mean, and this sounds kind of odd, but I said to her, I said, um, I mean, are you going to send me some non-minorities or women? Because once we created this environment and the playing field was level, women and minorities were just winning out, right?
Mhm.
But you've got to create that environment. You've got to create um, um, that the perception that this is a place that's welcoming for them, and then you can't have them run into unnecessary barriers. And I think
Mhm.
that's what me, and I'm just one airport. There are like 12 or 13 other African American airport directors who would probably say the same thing to you if they were on this call.
I love it. And you know what I think is really interesting? You had to create a culture, right?
Mhm.
You had to create a culture where when they turned that knob, the door actually opened. You didn't have to look for a lock or the janitor to open the door, right?
Marsha, what you're saying is so true because I mean, my goal is not to create a welcome environment just while I'm here. I
Mhm.
want this to be systemic, right? I want it to be part of the fabric of this organization that outlives me, right? And you do that again through systems and policies and people that you put in the right places, um, who will execute or live that culture well beyond me, right? I have a tendency to recruit and hire based on competencies, not
Right.
based on years of experience, right? I don't always look for someone who has 15 to 20 years of experience. I look for people that have certain competencies. And sometimes, often, those are younger professionals that I would normally get. And they come in with with kind of a chip on their shoulder. They have something to prove. They're very
Mhm.
aggressive. They want to make their mark. And to have that kind of energy in your organization with people who are very competent, it just allows you to have an organization that performs at a much higher
Mhm.
level.
But you were also you competencies. What are three competencies that are critical for you in your leadership team?
So teamwork, collaboration, diversity. I mean, we are a complicated um, organization. We have some 50 senior managers they're all responsible for distinct responsibilities in the organization, and there are often occasions where they have competing priorities, right? And so you've got to have a spirit of collaboration in your organization. We've talked some about the importance of having women and minorities have access, but having this culture of having an appreciation for how diversity enhances the organization's ability to perform, as opposed to the opposite, right? So that's an important competency. Teamwork. You have to care about people. If you're in my organization, if you don't demonstrate on a regular basis that you care about the people that are working with you, then this isn't the right place for you. I think if you talk to people that work with me throughout the organization, they will all say that I care about them. That doesn't mean I can always do what they want when they whatever they want whenever they want it, but they know that I always move in their best interest, and I'm always trying to do what's best for the organization.
Mm-hmm. And since there's an affiliation with the state, right?
Mm-hmm.
Are there special requirements that you must adhere to because it's in a state type property kind of organization?
So most all airports are owned either by a city or an authority that consists of representatives from as one or two cities, or in a rare occasion, they're owned and operated by a state. We're one of 3 states that operates the airports: Maryland, Alaska, and Hawaii. The only 3. And so we're part of a government system, and that comes with checks and balances that makes it sometimes a little more difficult to get done what we want to do. But that's all intended to protect the public's interest, and we get that. And so I always say to my team that if you can be successful in government with all the restrictions and the checks and balances that you have to work through, then you can be successful anywhere, right? And that's part of what makes working in government so rewarding, is that when you accomplish something significantly, you've come through a lot to get there. And so, yes, it comes with its challenges, but it is also very rewarding. And the airport is a utility, and it should be owned by a government organization, and we do the best we can to work within that system.
So in looking at this, it now also adds the name of Thurgood Marshall to the airport, which is it just makes me joyful. I know Larry Gibson, and the whole book about Thurgood Marshall and being in Maryland, it really is important. How does the world look at that and understanding Thurgood Marshall and who he really was and why it was important to name the airport after him?
So I was just before I left to go to Cleveland to head up the airport system there. I was here, and I helped bring the name change into fruition. I worked very closely with Mr. Gibson and members of the late Thurgood Marshall's family and Justice Marshall's family, and so that was probably one of the highlights of my career, was to be able to do that, to work with that. Airports are economic engines. It is often the first impression someone gets when they come to your community, sometimes the last impression. But people around the world, around the country, know airports and communities. And to have a name like Justice Thurgood Marshall attached to the airport sends a message around the world that this state has an appreciation for his vision, for what he stood for his body of work, and that they held it in such high esteem that they would attach it to its greatest asset, the airport. And so I think it sends a very compelling message. You look at airports across the country, and they all find people in their community that they honor. I don't think we could have honored a greater leader in this country than Thurgood Marshall.
And that's a powerful, powerful, powerful statement. It makes me want to cry just sitting here listening, because his body of work, and for him to have been on the Supreme Court was huge.
But to know the barriers that he faced in Maryland alone.
Yes.
Right.
Right.
And to now have his name as a part of the airport, it just shows, it shows enormous progress. We still have a ways to go. We have long ways to go, but it shows enormous progress. And it's a reminder to every little kid who walks into this airport or hears about, the airport on the news, because they always reference BWI as, we talk about weather and stuff. It reminds that kid that someone that looked like them, like an African American, did something special, so special that they would put his name on the airport.
Well, it's really special too, Ricky Smith, that you are the CEO and executive director of this airport. And the pride that we have having you in that seat is critical.
Thank
And
you.
we don't take your position lightly at all.
Well,
And that
thank you,
you
Marsha. I
have,
appreciate that.
but it's huge. And I don't say stuff, you know me well enough. I'm not going to just pat your back. The reality is that we need you there. And your body of work has demonstrated that you're about equality, that you're about progression. We've seen your work. Your body of work speaks for yourself, right? It speaks for you. And we're just grateful that you're there. We're grateful that you have actually made a decision that you were going to empower minority businesses and women to come in there and do business. Out of all the years I've been going to BWI didn't see this activity going on or hear about it.
You know, I um I don't think it's a sin to have an affinity for your community when you're in these positions, right? And again, this doesn't mean that you're doing anything unethical, right? You know, we don't give opportunities to minorities just because they're minorities. We create a level playing field so that they can compete, and we remove artificial barriers to entry. That alone works, right? We don't. I mean, I'm not doing set asides. I don't have contracts in my pocket that I'm walking in the streets finding minorities to hand out to. No, they come in and they compete, and when they compete, they do extremely well, and that makes me feel real good, right? Because we have some of the best talent in this state in terms of minorities, and I have stories of minority-owned firms. There's this one gentleman, I always talk about him. He came to me back in 2002. He was an employee of one of our engineering firms, and he was trying to make a decision as to what he was going to do next. And I advised him that if he made a decision to start his own business, he wouldn't lose BWI, because the only reason we hired the firm he was working for is because he was there. So he started his own firm, and he is now the largest African-American owned engineering firm in the aviation industry, right?
That's huge.
Yes. I mean, and he's now paying, he's now paying it forward, right? He's bringing along mentors that look like him. He probably has a good 6 or 7 minority-owned firms that he's mentoring. And so if we can't do that kind of stuff when we're in these roles, then not only do we disappoint our community, I think we disappoint other communities as well, right? Because I think they look to you to represent your community,
right?
And we shouldn't be bashful about that.
And I just think that the fact that, too often we have several folks of color who don't want to expose themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to put them in a position where they may lose the traction that they've already built, rather than understanding and owning the responsibility that they have to make certain that we're representative at all levels.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think you have to, when you're in these roles like anybody else, you have to perform at a level where people see you as the right person in the role, right? And you build some credits, whatever you want to call it. You establish the ability to kind of take some risks.
Yes.
Right. It is hard to do minority business sometimes. It really is. It's not always easy. And one of the fears that we have, and I talk to this about my colleagues all the time, is sometimes there's some risk associated with trying to break down barriers. And with that risk, sometimes there comes blowback, right? I mean, they, you know,
Mhm.
you're criticized or whatever, and and the community that adores you while you're out there opening doors for them isn't always the community that's willing to go to bat for you when you take the risk for them, right? And so, you know, I don't have that concern, but there are a lot of minorities that look, you know, people that look like me in these roles who don't want to take that risk for that reason, right? Because they just don't feel that there's a community out there that will protect them whenever they take that risk.
Mhm. Well, you know, I hope you know, you better know that we are protecting you, man. And we're just grateful that you are sitting in that seat. I
Thank you
am
so much,
happy to
Martha.
be able to have you on this show. I know you got stuff you need to go and run and do downstairs, but we appreciate you and all the work that you're doing and all that we're seeing, all of these minority and women owned businesses cropping up out there, which is, oh, huge. It's just huge.
Well,
And,
well, well,
and
well, well Marcia, because I know you're talking about big, but I gotta get this in before I leave. I mean,
all right, go ahead,
because
go ahead.
I have to commend you as well, right? Because so much of what we do in our community depends on how we control and define the narrative, and the work that you're doing
Hmm.
to influence the narrative in our community is critical. So I want to applaud you and commend you and thank you for the amazing work that you're doing, that you've been doing for a very long time.
Oh,
um,
thank
and
you.
so I don't want to miss this opportunity to thank you as well. The work you're doing is extremely important, and you do it so well, and you're so respected, and you have so much credibility. Just can't thank you enough for it.
Ricky Smith, BWI Marshall Airport, CEO, Executive Director. Thank you so much. I know you've got something to do at 6 o'clock, but we're going to come back and do this again and get some updates on what we need to be doing. Maybe we'll come out there and walk through the airport and see what
I would
all's
love that.
happening out there.
I would
Okay.
love that, Marsha.
All right, sir.
All right.
Thank you very much. We
Take care.
appreciate you.
You
Mhm.
too.
Bye. Ricky Smith. Oh man, this is really wonderful. We'll be right back with more of this show.